Central to every Gundam story is the presence of war. It is the one unifying thread never missing from the plot, the motivations, and the challenges we watch our protagonists face. It is ever present, and any story in this universe would feel empty without it. War is presented as an inevitability, the beginning and the end of the shortcomings of humanity. We are treated to the spectacle of hubris, anger, and evil, all dispatched by our protagonist's endless faith in humanity and the power of unity. These two forces are placed at odds time and time again with the simple message: war is bad. In almost every iteration of this tale, our protagonist is thrust into a war they have not chosen for themselves. The task is laid upon them to rise to the occasion and be the greater person, even though they are more often than not just children. This idealistic virtue of the new generation, vested with not only the will, but the capacity to surpass the failures of his ancestors and deliver the world built by corrupt adults from its own self-destruction, is necessary for the Gundam world. Until now. Iron Blooded Orphans is a black sheep of the Gundam family. It isn't missing any of the iconic giant robots or flashy battle scenes in space, but it did diverge from the standard Gundam formula. This is because it is the first Gundam story properly written for a new generation. The original Gundam series was written by and for a generation coming off of World War II and multiple wars in the Eastern world. In the wake of democracy arising within Japan, and still caught in the turmoil of the Cold War, global conflict was ever present, and war was a part of their reality that they saw in their day-to-day lives. It is no surprise then, this representation made it into their media. They didn't simply talk about war though, they attempted to provide an answer: unity. This is the most common response to war the franchise offers, seeing the humanity in those different from you, even in those you're placed against in battle. Sometimes this is even represented through metaphysical forces of human spirit and goodwill changing the course of war and preventing tragedy. This message was important and maybe even necessary for a world just experiencing the effects of the internet and the clash of cultures not accustomed to those different from them. Today though, they feel like empty platitudes. They ring hollow. Modern advancements in technology and its integration into every part of our lives has allowed us to solve problems that seemed intractable for previous generations. Because of this, we sometimes overlook the fact it has also introduced a whole new set of problems we've never faced before. These challenges are not only novel, but the fallout of our failure to manage them is something we are still learning and, frankly, suffering through today. In this vein, Iron Blooded Orphans identifies three core ideas that embody these challenges woven through the story at its deepest level. They motivate characters to action, cause conflict, and define the world they exist in. Through IBO's 2 seasons, we receive different perspectives on each. We come face to face with the inherent conflict of these concepts, taken to their extremes, and the difficulty of a world keeping them all in balance. To fully grasp the world that IBO has built, we need to break its message down, piece by piece, starting with the first and most obvious building block: family. Whether being shouted about by the protagonists, or the subtle underlying motivation for acts of violence, family is the most prominent focus of the show. Every important character has a unique interaction with this idea that defines their path in this world. On all sides, from the orphans to McGillis, some are driven by their lack of family, feeling the need to artificially recreate the bond for themselves in order to replace the family they never had. Others, like Cordelia and Carta, have contentious relationships with their families, these interactions being that which motivates them to the person they become. Lastly, we get to see the stabilizing force that family provides in Biscuit, Takaki, and the Turbans, all serving as the level-headed adults in the room for the rash and often reckless leader and soldiers of Tekkadan. This is what the show places front and center. Not only the difficulties of humans deprived of family and community, but the fact that even when deprived, we will create our own communities anew, sometimes in the worst ways possible. Throughout their journey, the ragtag group of mercenary orphans that made up Tekkadan faces challenges that test their conviction and their loyalty to each other. Being the protagonists of the show, we watch as these children willingly put themselves in harm's way to protect their fellow members, their chosen family. Naze is the one that opens their eyes to the fact that Tekkadan is more than just a group of human debris, that they treat each other as a family would. His character and virtue is made apparent as we learn about his company, the Turbans. Making it his mission to save women abandoned, abused, and left to work dangerous jobs, it is his priority to create a true family for these women lost in the world, and this is what he holds most dear. It is clear from Orga's surprise at understanding Naze's message that these children, deprived of family all their lives, didn't realize they were recreating what they had been yearning for. This is the impetus for what becomes a series-long search for Orga to create the family he always wished he had. With this guiding light, Orga brings Tekkadan into the larger organization of Teiwaz, joined in brotherhood with the Turbans. Their family grows larger, and for the moment, we see that family can be found in places you least expect. And this family and community brings much needed stability and safety to their lives. For Cordelia and Carta, their experiences have led them to very different conclusions. Born into and raised by wealthy families, both have been saddled with expectations and stand at odds with those closest to them. Idealists to their cores, they are steadfast in their convictions to a fault, granted confidence from their upbringings that have also driven them to take their own path. Cordelia, daughter of a politician, frustrated with her father's actions regarding Mars, is willing to run away from home in search of her place in the world, feeling trapped in her family's orbit that goes against her every ideal. In her own naivete, she believes that she can be a positive force of change and finds herself unprepared in the center of a conflict she doesn't truly understand. It is, ironically, the same upbringing that provides her the confidence to step into the world that also woefully prepared her for reality. At every turn, she attempts to shed the trappings of her heritage, to prove she is more than just her family name. But it is clear she has a lot of growing up to do before she can get there, and it is thrust in her face from her very first attempted niceties.
Is everything all right? I hope this is okay. I just wanted to show you that I see you as an equal.
I can't do it because my hands are really dirty right now.
Of course. I only...
Oh well. I guess that means the two of us weren't on equal terms to begin with.
Carta, the last of a dying bloodline, attempting to rise to the occasion as the lone child of a storied household, is on the other hand living fully in service of her family. The only daughter of the Issue family, with her father on a sickbed, the weight of her heritage falls on her shoulders. Even those she works for within Gjallarhorn are serving as her family's backers, providing them legitimacy. Carta is a young woman fighting for recognition in a space dominated by men. And even when she receives a post, it is predominantly ceremonial. Training diligently for her opportunity, wanting to do her family name justice, her commitment drives her forward, but it is the same commitment that leads to her downfall. For the orphans, family is a gaping hole in their lives they wish to fill. But for these two, it is a scar that marks their every action. It is a reminder that while family can be a positive force in our lives, we make ourselves vulnerable to those we hold close. And we must choose who we allow to truly leave their mark on us for life. This vulnerability is put on full display with what might be the saddest moment in Iron Blooded Orphans. After being defeated by Tekkadan once in space, Carta goes in search of redemption and chases down Tekkadan on Earth in order to restore her honor. The only thing she has left to her. With her men falling around her and the main forces of Tekkadan managing her attack head-on, she breaks her own conception of honorable warfare and chases down Orga and Biscuit in their mobile armor. As the two orphans rush towards safety, Carta closes the distance and in one swift motion, Biscuit is struck down. His final action being to remove Orga from harm's way, protect his family. Carta is temporarily subdued as she revels in her success, but the damage has been done. With this single moment begins the collapse of what lied at the core of Tekkadan. In Biscuit's last moments, he remembers his family, those he's leaving behind. His final words call to Orga.
Orga, I know that we can make Tekkadan.
We are left with an open-ended message, and even in his dying breaths, Biscuit sees the world clearly. The ideal Tekkadan was built upon is insufficient. Even though he is one of the orphans of Tekkadan, Biscuit does still have a family. Losing his parents in an accident, he now lives with his grandmother and two sisters that own a farm near the Tekkadan base. While he's not the best pilot, it is clear he is invaluable to the company as an advisor, and it is his family that truly sets him apart. As the members of Tekkadan fight time and time again to find their place in the world, it is much easier for them to put everything on the line when they have nothing to go back to. It is the temperament provided by Biscuit, the measured and rational guidance he provides, that keeps his family safe. With his passing, it is obvious how much his presence is missed, as Tekkadan continues forward with more recklessness than ever and at the cost of more of their family. Deep in despair at the loss of Biscuit, Orga sulks in his room. Mikazuki, caring little for his emotions, presses Orga, asking him for guidance. This has been the relationship since the beginning, and yet nothing has changed. Driven forward by their fervor and chasing what they wished they had, they yearn for a guiding light, and left alone in this world, they look inward, only to find they don't have the answers they need. In this moment, it is clearer than ever. Tekkadan may be a family, but they are a family adrift at sea with no heading. While also an orphan, McGillis Farid's experience with family stands in stark contrast. Having to fight and prove himself in a world built on nepotism, he was only chosen by a family due to his capability. He takes an arranged marriage, which on the surface gives him a family, but while he seems genuine, this front is flimsy at best, and the end of the first season opens our eyes to his true goals and desires, and what will become his second building block. From an early age, McGillis was forced to fend for himself. Left to commit crime in order to feed himself as a child, he suffered sexual abuse and violence from the adults around him, including his own adopted father. Through this, he is taught that power is the law of the universe, and it is the ability to leverage any power he has and fight viciously in the world for his survival that matters. It is exactly these budding qualities that draw the attention of his adoptive father, Isnario Farid. Yet even when he is finally provided with a family, the abuse and neglect continued. Callous and cold to the world, McGillis doesn't hope to find comfort in family. Instead, he fills the void with tales of the founder of Gjallarhorn, Agnika Kairu. He fills the void with the promise, purpose. Boiling under the surface of the entire world of IBO is the impending rot of Gjallarhorn, a once great organization built by Agnika Kairu in order to protect all of humanity from extinction at the hands of the Mobile Armors. It has since transformed into a peacekeeping organization, working with the Earth's government in order to bring stability to all humans now scattered across the galaxy. But this pretty description hides the corruption festering at the core of an organization that has forgotten its roots. Now filled with leaders more interested in their vainglory and profits, they create peace through violence, overlook suffering to pad their wallets, and now look down on any person who has received the Alea Vignana surgery as less than human, when this very creation was developed by their beloved leader and saved the human race. At its core, Gjallarhorn has lost sight of its purpose. This failure drives the story forward, enabling the conditions that lead to Tekkadan's creation, the dissatisfaction of workers on Dort, and the political rifts that result in Gjallarhorn's loss of control. This is what McGillis intends to rectify. At every turn, his actions serve his lofty purpose, reimagining himself as the modern Agnika Kairu, the true savior of Gjallarhorn and its return to its initial goal. As Season 2 closes, we even see his willingness to sacrifice the only people he's ever called family, in Karta and Gaelio, at the altar of his purpose he has decided for himself. On this path, we see the inherent tension created between McGillis and Tekkadan. On one hand, McGillis will lay any family and relationship he has at the feet of his self-proclaimed purpose. In his hubris, he has become the Cain to his Abel, taking the lives of those the world has favored as he wished he was, and in due time the world will punish him for his sins just as God did Cain. On the other side, Tekkadan has contracted every bit of their purpose to their family, and any purpose they claim to have is an empty promise with no true goal in sight. When they found no answers within themselves, Orga and Mikazuki put a name to what they longed for: home. Home became their North Star, their mantra when they felt hopeless, their far-off dream. In their ignorance, they didn't realize they had created their own futile, never-ending journey. Home had become their golden calf. In search of salvation, they had chosen to worship a false ideal rather than realize that the family they had built was the home they had always searched for. This conflict between the absolutes of each ideal is at the heart of IBO's story, and it's at their intersection that our third building block lies. For the characters that IBO revolves around, it's abundantly clear that they are incomplete people. Where they carry virtues or excel at specific skills, their actions belie their flaws, and we are constantly reminded just how broken they all are. It is this incompleteness that defines the final piece of the puzzle: humanity. From the opening seconds of the show, we are presented with the actions of people broken by the world they live in. We come face to face with a child, killing before he can even properly handle the gun. They do not shy from showing us the effects this life has had on Mikazuki, him being the prime example of someone who has forsaken his humanity in order to fill the gaping hole the world has left him with. He has become cold, forced to cut away the parts of himself that would make him vulnerable. Episode after episode, he is placed into dangerous situations, forced to defend the only thing he has in this world, his family, with the only method he knows: violence. Yet, even in the moments of reprieve, away from the battlefield and with those he cares about most, he does not break his stoic shell. It's clear that in order to survive in this world, Mikazuki has sacrificed the part of him that is human. He relies on those around him, like Orga, to guide him, as misguided as he is. He has become a weapon to serve his family, regardless of where they are headed. Yet there is a single lifeline that keeps him grounded. Another orphan, Atra, works as the cook of the base. At a young age, Mikazuki saved her from starvation, and this remains one of the only truly human moments we see him display. Through this, she develops a deep love for him. While she's clearly not a fighter, she manages to not only be one of the most important members of the company, but one of the most human. Willing to follow the leaders of Tekkadan to the end of the earth, she differs in that her path is not defined by searching for home, as she has found that in Mikazuki. For her, the young man that fed her when she was hungry, protected and cared for her, that was home. He was her family and her purpose, and through him she became whole. In conflict, she is tenacious, in tragedy, she is tender, and it is the comfort and stability she finds in her path that is the endless font this all pours from. It is her humanity, and she is not afraid to share it with the world. Before they embark on their dangerous journeys, Atra gifts Mikazuki and Kudelia with bracelets as good luck charms. But little does she know just how important it will become in keeping Mikazuki tethered to his humanity. Back on Earth, McGillis has hidden his lack of humanity much more adeptly until now. As the shams of his relationships from the first season fall away, we see that he has, in the same way as Mikazuki, sacrificed his humanity, but this time for his purpose. Sending Carta into a battle he knows she can't win, and killing his brother-in-arms in Gaelio with his own two hands. While his belief that Gaelio is dead will be proven false, he is nonetheless willing to destroy anyone who stands in the way of his purpose, even if it is the only family he has. He is spurned on by the power he desires to enact his dreams, and for the time being, his actions serve his goal well. Little does he know, he's tilling the earth of the garden of his own destruction. All that's left is for him to plant the seed. But there is still one more unmentioned victim of the scourge of humanity that the first season holds. Introduced in the first few episodes, Ein Dalton is a young Gjallarhorn soldier eager to prove himself. His father, an officer within Gjallarhorn, he follows in his footsteps as he strives to be a good soldier and climb the ranks. As time goes on though, the rot in Gjallarhorn too surrounds him. Looked down upon and treated as lesser because of his Martian birth, Ein finds friendship in Gaelio, and in finally finding connection, he commits himself entirely. Battle after battle, Ein puts himself in harm's way to protect and help Gaelio on the battlefield, ultimately resulting in his own temporary demise. Each of these building blocks of the story has had an avatar to represent it. For family, Orga; purpose, McGillis; and now for humanity, it is Ein. But each of these has also had their counter. Biscuit, the foil for Orga, providing stability. Gaelio is McGillis' counter, being the closest thing he ever had to family. For Ein, this is Lieutenant Crank Zent, the veteran officer he served under in the last remnants of a once honorable Gjallarhorn. When their unit is called to attack the Mars base in search of Kudelia, Crank is the lone officer that acts with restraint, reluctant to fight and kill children at the order of his superiors. Not only does he maintain his humanity, but he carries with him a traditional form of honor. He is a symbol of the old ways, and he lives them out by requesting a duel against Mikazuki in order to protect his crew and accomplish the mission without bloodshed. While he fails in this duel, he loses with honor and requests that Mikazuki finish him off, as he can't return to his crew disgraced. This pivotal moment displays the stark contrast between the dying tradition of Crank and the cold path Mikazuki walks into the future as the new face of war. This is the symbol of the death of the old ways, the change that had to be made for a new generation. For most of the Western world, we've been able to live through one of the most peaceful times in human history, unity or not. And even when we see new conflict, it looks nothing like it used to. Gone are the trenches and blitzkriegs, carpet bombing and widespread devastation, replaced with precision strikes and long-standing occupations. Instead of infantry chewing barbed wire, it's pogues chowing down in a mess hall in their downtime after managing the logistics for the drone team. Just as the advancements in technology have changed the modern face of the battlefield as we know it, this is the next change war must face. As the story progresses, Crank's apprentice Ein is taken up as the representative of his ideals, and even as he struggles to carve out his place in the ranks of Gjallarhorn, he suffers the same fate. Only this time, instead of dying an honorable death like Crank, he becomes the embodiment of the bastardization of technology, becoming one with the machine and becoming himself a weapon of war. This is not a decision he has made alone though. Behind the intensive surgeries Ein undergoes is McGillis, not realizing that he has now planted the seed of his own downfall. In the final battle of the first season, we get the full picture of what Ein has truly become. He has forsaken his humanity entirely, ensconced in the view of the supremacy of the technology that has made him what he is. Speaking of Mikazuki as an animal for the little human form that remains of him, repeatedly telling him he carries sin purely for being human, calling him defective and telling him that he will never be able to know the incorruptible righteous path for humans. Ein is unlike Mikazuki, Orga, and McGillis, though. He never lacked family or purpose. He's always been whole, and his humanity remained intact. Yet, even as a whole person, Gjallarhorn would not accept him as he was, and not being able to achieve the world he saw for himself, he sacrificed the most valuable thing he had to reach it. Gjallarhorn was built on the back of the Alea Vijnana system, a dangerous and invasive surgery intended to create more perfect pilots able to combat the dangers humans faced, dangers humans had also developed. Created by Gjallarhorn's founder, it was their salvation, saving humans from themselves. As time passed and humans settled into safety again, they rejected their own brainchild. Now scarred by the fact their own creations had nearly wiped out the human race, these advancements became taboo. While higher society deemed the surgery a sin, it became the norm for human debris to receive the surgery in order to become more valuable employees and carve out space for themselves in the world. Yet even though these are man-made creations, the child of humanity's ingenuity and integration with technology, anyone receiving the Alea Vijnana or similar surgery is seen as less than human. Ein is not alone though. Due to the capabilities of Barbatos, it puts an extreme strain on Mikazuki to pilot it. First, we see him lose control of his right arm, coincidentally, the arm that does not wear Atra's bracelet, lose vision in his right eye, bleed profusely through his toughest fights, and eventually become nearly paralyzed. Barbatos is the representation of the deal we make with the devil in war, the sacrifice of his humanity he is making for victory, made physical. More than that, though, Barbatos is, in a very literal sense, a demon. Iron Blooded Orphans is set in the post-disaster timeline, where 72 Gundam frames have been created, each to match one of the 72 demons listed in the Ars Goetia. Throughout the series, a few Gundams are identifiable by both name and by their sigil to represent specific demons including Kamaris and Gusion, and Barbatos is no different. Within the Ars Goetia, Barbatos is a spirit with a number of powers regarding communication with animals and uncovering hidden treasures. Most interestingly though, he is said to reconcile disputes between friends and those who hold power. This is not unique to Barbatos though, as most of these spirits carry this same description. While reconciliation is typically considered to be through negotiation, peaceful methods, Mikazuki only knows one way to reconcile disputes, and the power of Barbatos is his greatest bargaining chip. In this way, all of the Gundams created in this universe have become the final bargaining chips anyone wields in their interstellar negotiations. But nothing comes for free. As Mikazuki and Ein lock horns in battle, he asks Barbatos to give him the power he needs to win. His first deal is made, and so his first sacrifice. His sacrifices are not absolute though. When attached to the Gundam, he regains everything he has lost. It is the devil's seduction, promising him the power he needs to achieve his dreams and trapping him at every turn. It is up to Mikazuki if he will maintain his humanity or be lost to Barbatos' clutches. With their enemies defeated, political victories won, and a home secured on Mars, the first season leaves us with a sense of hope for the future. But the writers won't wait long to rob us of this, as the second season is truly what makes Iron Blooded Orphans unique in the Gundam universe. Any question of Mikazuki's chosen path in regards to Barbatos are quickly answered as he and Orga commit to what has already brought them this far, standing over a headstone ingrained with the names of every member of Tekkadan that has given their life to the family. Their search for home is no longer just a golden calf to worship, it is now their religion. It is the only way of life they know, and they will chase it to the ends of the earth, because without it, they would be lost yet again. We are presented with the negative fallout of their actions, the violence they have inspired throughout space, and the death it has led to. Even while they experience personal success, child soldiers have become commonplace, having seen the success of the children of Tekkadan and weapons of war are in full production. In these moments, we see the ideals Iron Blooded Orphans has laid out flipped on their head. Where there once stood family, there are now enemies within. Where there once was purpose, it has become obsession. This is IBO's identity. Rather than the growth of our protagonists, or the call to unity, we see the commitment to their ideals at all costs. and the inevitable outcomes of an imperfect world. The Gundam universe is often shown to us through stories with black and white morals. Even flawed heroes can be mistaken for the villains they fight. But Iron Blooded Orphans lives comfortably in the gray, every character facing the consequences of their actions, and it makes them more human than ever. As the family of Tekkadan grows, we see the dilution of their principles. Originally, a ragtag group, orphans fighting for a place in the world, driven forward by their desperation, we are presented with new members who have joined seeking glory or wealth, as well as their old connections in Tewas souring. Those who had previously accepted Tekkadan, now plotting against them as the orphans have become a real threat to the hierarchy in the Tewas family. Jasly Donomikols is the very enemy within they fear. He spearheads the attempt to undermine Tekkadan as a leading member of Tewas. He goes about attacking them directly and even instructs the assassination of one of their most beloved members, Lofter. One of the women Naze took in to protect, Lofter was forced to find a new path in life after the turbans are scattered to the wind in the wake of Naze's death. Lofter was welcomed into the Tekkadan family wholeheartedly and was able to find love in Akihiro, one of their core members and top pilots. Yet merely a day after their first date, everything is stolen from her. This is only the beginning of Tekkadan watching everything they love being ripped away from them, and it will shift their course for good. It is this moment they realize that no matter how much they succeed, the world will not accept them. This sends them on a spiral of fighting those they once considered friends, and rethinking every alliance they once held. Family, which has defined their journey thus far, has now become the source of their greatest suffering, and it is far from over. Tekkadan fights to maintain their place in the world as it turns against them, and at every turn, a family member is stripped away. Shino, Orga, Hush, all falling one by one as every bit of hope they have is dashed against the shores of Gjallarhorn's empire. It is acknowledged by Rustal Elyon, a senior leader within Gjallarhorn, that just removing McGillis is not enough to restore order. It is finishing off Tekkadan and denying the movement that they represent that will allow the world to return to stability. The search for a place in the world Tekkadan was built upon is no longer just a dream for themselves. It has become a childish effort to shape the world in their image, and in that effort, they have stepped into the ring with opponents they were not prepared to face. As McGillis continues his campaign for power and to enact the reincarnation of Ignika Kairu within himself, he begins to face opposition. Rustal Elyon recognizes McGillis for what he is, just a child who can't grow up, and he disparages his efforts as a rebel sullying the history of Ignika Kairu. The commander of the formidable Arianrod fleet, Rustal is McGillis' elder within Gjallarhorn leadership. His experience is evident in the way he conducts himself, as well as the respect and loyalty his leadership demands. Serving under him is an elite set of pilots that will challenge our protagonists at every turn, thwarting their plans. Elyon does not do this simply out of service though, as he too carries his own ambitions. For all of the childish vigor he sees in McGillis, he too wishes to change the course of Gjallarhorn, and while he speaks of order and peace, he drives forward to create it through battle, seeing Tekkadan and McGillis as the enemies he can strike down to bring Gjallarhorn back to its former glory in the eyes of the people. Even with the power of Gundam Bile, McGillis is shown that alone he cannot succeed. He requires the backing of the people to create the world he desires, and more so of those around him. It is his own actions to alienate himself and the only family and community he has ever had that is leading to his failure to live out his goal. All of the history and myths he values fall on deaf ears when he has lost touch with the people in the world today, and can only offer the remnants and memories of a world long gone. It is the alienation he has created for himself that foretells his downfall. As he flounders in his failure, McGillis struggles to his last breath to search for the path to the future he sees in his mind's eye. It is his own family in Gaelio that brings about his end, defeating both him and Gundam Bile in battle. It is Galio that finds him in his bloodied state, speaking to him in his final moments. He makes him look his failure in the eye, to see that he has fallen short of his imitation of not only Agnika Kairu, but Cain as well. McGillis, with his dying breaths, describes his rejection of family, that with a family he had become complacent, that it was only when he pushed away those close to him that he could give himself wholly to his purpose. He had failed to realize that a purpose devoid of family would lead him to this exact point, time and time again. For all the success and power in the world is empty when it is one alone. It wasn't until he stood at death's door that he could admit to himself that it was his family that brought him his humanity. As the death toll mounts, the violence escalates. It is sparse few moments that we see the humanity of the characters on screen seep through. Weapons of war once banned are brought into the fold, family is killed, assassinations in cold blood celebrated. Even in their final moments, Mikazuki remembers the dream Orga promised him, and with his own words speaks to its vague conclusion, not knowing where it leads. As the newest members of their family die, or their mobile suits become incapacitated, the fight is left to Akihiro and Mikazuki. Even when offered, neither is willing to leave the other. As family joined in an endless mission, they will stand side by side till the end, wherever it leads. It is with the knowledge that behind them, with every fight won, their family moves a step closer to safety that they keep moving forward. Their opponents see them as monsters as they tear through their ranks, Mikazuki having earned his nickname the Devil many times over. Even through everything, they are still just human debris in the eyes of the world around them, and they will never be anything more. It is with this disdain that Gjallarhorn can justify bringing out weapons of war considered inhumane, skewering the Gundams where they stand. In the rubble and the destruction, we see Mikazuki's arm, adorned by Atra's bracelet, twitch for what might be the last time. He is brought to the moment when him and Orga first started the family they have today. He is led by the mission Orga left him with years ago. With the rattling throes of a monster, Barbatos rises under Mikazuki's command, tossing away any chance semblance of retaining his humanity in a final bid to defend all he holds dear. Even as he is struck and blood leaks from every orifice, bones broken, and body injured beyond repair, he still manages to remove those that created the world that brought them to this moment. As he descends deeper, giving every bit of himself to Barbatos, he fights like a demon possessed. In his last-ditch efforts, as Barbatos fails him, Mikazuki realizes that the world he and Orga had been hoping to build, the goal they were searching for, was already at their feet, that they had been blinded by their desires, and that their lack of purpose had left them adrift. He remarks that his life had never had any meaning anyways, and it was only that his family had given him a reason to exist. He was never going to be able to escape the battlefield, as the world had broken him in ways he could not return from. As he fades away, what brings him home is the image of Atra, the soon-to-be mother of his children. Mere moments later, Barbatos is skewered on a sword as we watch the last vestige of Mikazuki's arm fall limp, his blood spilling over Atra's bracelet and sullying his last attachment to his humanity. His thoughts reverberate, only concerned that he had dirtied the bracelet, that ultimately he had taken for granted his humanity. What then are we left with as the last blood is spilled in this conflict? Those willing to give their lives in order to forge a greater world, all dead in vain? No. Instead, we see it is ultimately what they lacked that left them incapable of creating the world they had imagined. It is without his family that McGillis would fail to find the support for the purpose he desired. It is without purpose that Tekkadan has been left listless, their leaders forever doomed to find their mortal ends on the battlefield they had relied upon. For each, it was not tolerable to simply accept failure, to just exist in a world that had given them nothing. Instead, they sacrificed the only thing they had to gain purchase from a position of destitution, their humanity. Little by little, we watched as the actions they took became more destructive and their decisions were indefensible. This did not stem from a place of evil or hate, though. This came as a reaction to a world that could not comprehend their lives. As the world moved around them, they had to simply watch, their burden greater, their reward less, their punishment harsher, their relief shorter. Gjallarhorn had ruled with an iron fist and created a world of cruelty serving only the members of their ranks. Yet even Ein Dalton, who had his family, his purpose, and his humanity, suffered. He lived as a whole person, but what then would drive him to give up what so many others so desperately strived for? What is one to do when your purpose to chase in your father's footsteps is stymied at every turn by those around you? When you cannot even be considered worthy by those you fight side by side with because of your Martian birth? Gjallarhorn had failed the world, but more so, it had succeeded in building a world devoid of what lies at the very heart of Iron Blooded Orphans' ideals: hope. Beyond any flaws or virtues, regardless of whether we are whole or not, it is a world that steals hope from us that is the bleakest. It is the world in which the residents of Mars had no ability to determine their own future, where orphans and human debris are left to die, starving or abused with no light at the end of the tunnel. No matter what is lacking, like both Ein and Mikazuki, it is the absence of hope that will drive them to sacrifice their ideals and very beings to carve out a world for themselves and everything they hold dear. It is in this failure to grow and become whole that IBO sets itself apart. We are not meant to see our protagonists succeed, to see them grow old. Assailed on all sides and victims of their own flaws, each spells their own defeat. We are reminded that these are humans, not to be protected by writers' whims and desires. It is simply that their luck has run dry. Family, purpose, and humanity have all served as the building blocks of this story, but they do not provide the whole picture. We watch a protagonist fail and suffer and never get to see their true growth. This is what sours the story for so many Gundam fans, so deprived of the conclusion they are accustomed to. Instead, sneakily working underneath the entire story, it is the growth of the true hero of Iron Blooded Orphans that we experience: Kudelia Ina Bernstein. As a child, Kudelia is enraptured by a painting in a book. The painting titled Maiden of Revolution. This is the moniker she is known by for years. But with her caretaker's death, Kudelia's flashbacks remind her of when she first encountered this painting. Her caretaker remarks that rather than just a maiden of revolution, it is that the woman depicted is in fact hope itself. In her grieving, Kudelia realizes her path must change, and she decides who she wants to be: the shining beacon of hope in the world, the lighthouse for those lost and desperate. Yet no matter the conviction she carries, Kudelia is far from ready to take on this role. In her naivete and youthful exuberance, she has taken on every challenge, finding both victory and defeat. Most important, though, is her steadfast commitment, as she becomes an endless source of hope for everyone she touches. The growth we have so desperately missed in all of Iron Blooded Orphans' protagonists is found in Kudelia. From a youthful activist misguided by her desires to change the world, into an effective politician that brings about real change to those in need. From a girl cowering behind adults to a woman who will face the world as it is. It is that she will not simply talk about the world she wants to create, but take action to bring it about as a reality. It is through Kudelia that hope for the future is created in the wake of Tekkadan. Her efforts produce opportunities for Martians, schools for young children whose parents never got an education, and a peaceful alliance with the Gjallarhorn under new leadership and in the path to refinding its purpose. Even as Tekkadan planted the seed for those lost and destitute in the world, it is Kudelia that tended and cared for this budding hope and made its growth a reality. It is only as the story closes that Iron Blooded Orphans is openly self-aware. As the victors of Gjallarhorn recover from their battle with Tekkadan, they realize that this ragtag group was facing a world that would not accept them, and placed down a path that would lead to their own destruction, not by their own choosing. As the soldiers reminisce, it is remarked that regardless of any flaws or shortcomings, Tekkadan was fighting just to survive, and it made them more human than anyone else. The fact everyone facing them failed to understand their purpose led their enemies to fail to understand their limits, the extent they would go in order to create a world for their family to live in. It is through sacrifice that they find a way to create hope for those around them. With no other way forward, it's with conviction that Mikazuki dies as a martyr to create a world of hope for his future son and family. In this way, Iron Blooded Orphans speaks not only to a new generation dealing with a changing world, but a generation facing a world that is stagnated. Across the globe, we see a changing of the guard, the previous generation handing the reins over to the new, albeit maybe later than usual. This burden now falls on us to create a world to meet the challenges we face, but we must be reminded of our own shortcomings. None that have come before us have done this perfectly, and in our own confidence, we will be blinded. It is in the image of a world that provides hope that we must craft our future, and it is only through the process of peace and cooperation that we can truly make change. We are quick to forget this process, the struggle, and what has led us to where we are today. Among the soldiers, it is Gaelio's past self that leaves us with what might be the most poignant statement the show has to offer. If you wish to attain true power, you must remain human. It is those who maintained their humanity that are left alive, and in its own cruel way, it is those who have been given the opportunity of staying human that are left to shape the world. Yet the story closes with the last vestige of Mikazuki's struggle against the world, as his son grows up on Mars, full of hope. On his wrist, the 3 bracelets Atra had made, reminding us that even as someone like Mikazuki was broken by the world, he still could leave behind something whole.